Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. I've got two files open. I've got my brick wall that I've opened previously, which is the Photoshop file, and then I've got a new one that I've just brought in, which is a PNG file, which I've got off the internet. Now, sometimes you might find that the background is already see-through or invisible, and you'll see what that looks like in a minute. If you've already got an invisible background, you don't need to do the next few steps, but this is what you would do if you need to get rid of the background to make it transparent. First of all, if you've got a lock on your layer, so this is usually your background layer because you've only got one layer, you can't do anything to the background if there's a lock on it. So sometimes you can just take the lock off on Photoshop itself. Sometimes you can't take it off at all, in which case you need to find a new file to use. And sometimes you can get rid of it by duplicating the layer. So if you duplicate the layer, it simply comes up and you give it a new name. So I could call this one Bart, and I could save that, and my new layer probably won't have the lock on it. Now I'm going to just close off my original one. I'm just going to use the one I've called Bart now. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of the white. There's a few different ways that I can do that. The simplest way of doing it is just to use my eraser. Now if I choose my eraser tool, and you can see it's very small at the moment, if I use my on my keyboard, I can choose my open and close bracket to make it bigger and smaller. You can see when I go into that, I make it a bit smaller, I can get into tighter corners and so on. I can actually delete some of my background that way. And if I get this check pattern coming up, that means I've deleted the background and I've got transparency coming through. So that's one tool to do it. Obviously, I can zoom in, and if I zoom in using the magnifying glass, I can go in close on something. I can get a lot more detail for when I use my eraser tool, so it's a little bit easier for me. I'm not going to do that for the moment. I'm going to go back probably to about 80% to see this on the screen. I'm going to use a different tool. I've got one here which is called the Quick Selection tool. If I use my Quick Selection tool, it will pick out a colour for me. So you can see I've got what's called marching ants around this area now. And if I hit the delete button on my keyboard, it'll get rid of that in one go. And I can add another little bit in. And so long as I'm picking the same colours, it works very nicely. And I'm going to go all around his head here, down to his arm, delete again. There are other ways I could do it. I'll finish off this little last bit here. Now I want to be careful I don't delete his eyes, and I've got a space in here as well, and I've got this space under here, but I don't want to get rid of the bits on his shoes. Now something else I could use, I'm probably not going to want to do it, I'm going to use Control and D to get rid of that marching ants, and I'm going to show you the Lasso Tool. Now the Lasso Tool allows me to draw a lasso around something, so if I went in and did a big chunk like this, I could just hit delete and get rid of that chunk. So sometimes using the Lasso Tool might be a good way of going in. Sometimes the eraser tool will be good, and sometimes the magic selection tool will be good. I'm just going to use the magic tool selection to finish this one off. Hopefully that's only getting the area I want to get rid of. There we go. And Control D to get rid of it. Now all I want to do is to drop this picture onto my wall. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to float this picture by grabbing the top up here and pulling it down. Now I've got my picture floating. It's not connected. I can use my move tool, and on my move tool I simply drag. See, I've missed a little bit on Bart there. I've got a little bit that's still white in here, so I'm going to just get rid of that before we go any further. There we go, to finish that off. And I'm going to grab my floating Bart now with my move tool and drag him onto my brick wall. I'm going to minimize this, and there he is. So there's Bart. He's a bit big at the moment, so I could use my transform controls, which I can see on the corners here, and I can drag him, make him a bit smaller, position him where I wanted to. And you'll see that at the same time it's brought this layer into my brick wall Photoshop now, at which point I should call it something else. I don't want to keep calling it brick wall. If this is my graffiti, I should now use File, Save As, and give it a new name. Before I can do that, it's telling me I need to apply my transformation, which I'll say yes to, and I could give it a new name and call it something else now. I've already got one called graffiti, so I will just save that again. Okay, and that's all you need to do to remove backgrounds and to get your graffiti image in the first instance onto your wall.